service, internet service throughout. So at certain times, no service, we missed key areas where he might have been. And we reached to the top. We came back down, we went to Kitishan Hill, and we had to regroup and then go back up again. And the second go around, that is when we were able to locate him. We were in contact, we were in constant contact with him. He was able to provide key hints as to where he might have been. So he was hearing a lot of gushing water, like the rivers. So we use that type of information to kind of triangulate as to, the general location as to where he was. So it was a daunting task, I might add. The legs on them are a bit sore right now, but that is the soreness of the muscles. If I had to do it, tomorrow again, I would be back there again. But we want to encourage persons, what you need to do is to first, if you have to go up in the mountains for any particular reason, go to the nearest police station and let them know what you are about to do. 2, don't ever try to do it alone. Make sure you have someone who is familiar with the mountain, a guide, so that you can safely go up and return back down. Yes, maybe we could probably swing off into the conversation.
Before we do so, though, did the individual stay at one spot, or was he constantly moving, trying to find his way out?
He was moving at a particular point. We had encouraged him not to move. And then when we recognized that, hey, we reached up, we came back down, we then had to encourage him to make his way back up the trail. Reason for this is, when you're further down, you have a wider span to cover. Remember, the mountain is like a dome, all right? So the higher up you go, the easier it is, the easier it would be for us to locate you, rather than having that broad area to cover down below. And that is what initially happened. He started making his way up, and then that's when we were able to locate him.
His phone was charged? That's why you got in touch with him?
He had a power pack, fortunately, so he maintained battery life throughout the incident.
Okay, so it was just a matter of signal off and on.
Yes.
Did he share his experience being alone in the night?
There was a bit of a language barrier. He knew very little English. He's not a descendant from here.
Okay.
So there was a bit of a language barrier. But upon his exit, we handed him over to the EMS department, which then took him to the hospital for observations and what's that.
Okay, all right. So the final check was done, but he seemed okay. He seemed
okay. He was a bit weak. I mean, being up in the mountains, rainy conditions, you're having to spend the night over there in the cold.
In rain.
In rain, exactly. So he was a bit weak, but he managed to walk out of the mountain rather than us having to carry him out.
Okay, all right. Thanks for sharing that experience with us, Timothy. And I do hope our listeners, those who are on the bit on the adventure side, to take heed of your suggestions in terms of when you're going hiking, in terms of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Anything to add to what Timothy shared in terms of tips?
Yes, well, he would have mentioned one of two of the more important ones. We would have, since we would have formed a search and rescue team in St. Kitts, And I could say that Mr. Martin and myself would have been two of the how should I put it, the beneficiaries of this type of training. We were exposed to a lot of this training, and ever since that type of mechanism was in place, we have responded to a lot of rescues.
Too much to mention.
Wow.
Too much to mention. Some were fortunate, like Mr. Martin mentioned, and others were not so fortunate. And one of the things we always try to enforce is, of course, what he would have mentioned, not going alone. It doesn't matter how good you know the trail. It is not safe to go alone, because while you might know the trail like the back of your hand, if something happens to you and you are alone, you are by yourself. And that is where it gets really, 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 really dangerous. Is that you have nobody to help you. You have no kind of assistance. So you could imagine worst case scenario what could happen because you choose to go alone. So we would always encourage a buddy system. Go with somebody else. Make sure people know where you are and where you are going. As he mentioned, go to the police station, tell the police know you're gone, tell a family member where you're going. So at least we have information. And when it comes to groups, whenever you're going as a group, you should inform whether the police station or the fire station, or even if you want to call the defense force. But somebody must know that you are going, we want numbers, and you must have some kind of accountability mechanism in place. When you're on your hike and you reach the top of the trail, you do a head count to make sure that everybody who you left at the bottom with made it to the top. So at least you know everybody made it to the top and nobody was lost or went wandering. The same thing when you're coming back down. Even if you want to stop maybe halfway to take a next check to make sure. At least if anybody wandered off, you know they would have wandered off between the top or halfway down. Instead of reaching all the way to the bottom and realize that you're missing two persons. Then we have to search the entire area, which makes the search a lot more difficult. So there must, it's not just a hike. It's not just, yes, it's a hike and it's fun, but you have to take other things into consideration. There must be some kind of accountability in place. So at least if we have to respond to anything, you would have some valuable information that would narrow down the search. You know, where were the last time, where were the last point we saw them? Okay, well, we saw them halfway up by this rock and the rock was marked. Okay, so we know, okay, well, you know, we could start there. Even with the possibility that they might have wandered off and come down. So, and when it comes to persons who are not locals, they are not from here, especially tourists or maybe students, we encourage that they take a guide. And wherever they are staying, we are asking that whether it's a hotel or whether it's a school, that they encourage them not to go on these trails by themselves. So to prevent this type of incidents, because St. Kitts is a small place, yes, but those hills,
I'm surprised. I was even surprised when you guys made mention that, you know, things like this happen too often.
Very often.
Yeah, too often.
And a lot of times, or some of the times, it's not that they don't know their way back down. It's just that something happened. They got injured, or they start feeling sick, or they fainted, or something like that. So we find ourselves having to go up. So it's not always a case where they're lost. It's just that they choose to go by themselves. Right? Even sometimes I did a search over on the Southeast Peninsula.
Southeast?
Yeah. Just on the hill behind Christophe Harbour.
Wow. Interesting.
See?
Interesting. Even behind there, they get an adventure.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that you guys are trained in terrain and maps and stuff like that.
Yes, to certain degree. Not to the full extent.
Like
But
how
we would have
the
touched,
defense
not
force
like what the
did.
army
Yeah.
would have. But we would have touched, for instance, I would have done some training with using GPS,
Mm-hmm.
setting waypoints and that type of stuff. So I'm familiar with that. Mr. Marty would have done some mapping,
Map work.
map work and so. But it's not, you know, there's still a lot of room for training in that area. Mapping and navigation, GPS reading and that type of stuff.
So I see why you incorporate the defense force and the police now to help you
Yes,
guys. Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes.
So it's a collaborative effort.
Well, that's how the team was formed. The team was a multi-agency team: fire, police, military, medical. So at least you have a rounded team. If it's an incident where you need security, you have police. And you have army. If it turns out to be a medical issue, you have medical persons on the team. So it's a well-rounded team.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I follow. Gentlemen, can you put on your headphones? Let's take our first call for this morning, man. Good morning, you're live. Hey, hey, hey.
Ay, 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 casita linda, mamá.
Ay, ay, ay.
Hey, hot.
I mean, you're listening, you know, and I want to give one or two advice from experience. We all know the story about the lady who went in the forest and she dropped some bread pit so that she don't last coming on her way back, but she did last because
Something eat them.
aye. And I never do in the forest, I think I will don't eat them before the boat. Now, one thing, like when they have some long races in some countries, what they do, they spray something, a paint, a high colored paint along the coast. So whenever you reach and you make your circle coming back, and you see the paint, then you know you're on the right track. It could be a piece of cloth you tie on something, or whatsoever it is. That's the safest way. Or also, apart from having your mobile phone with you, they could also have a whistle. And according to what, they just give a sound, and you down at the bottom, you hear the whistle blow, you say, okay. You're gonna respond to them, and they keep blowing until you all make contact with each other.
Right.
Yeah, those are my two suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to the club of AA. That's sweet, yeah?
Yeah. All right, buddy.
Have a good day.
You too,
Yes,
man.
yes.
Yeah, bye.
You would have mentioned the markings. The trails are marked. Yeah?
Heavily mapped.
They are marked. Those guys are the park rangers. They do a good job at marking the trails. So the trails are marked. There are times where persons deviate from the trail,
And that's the problem.
and that's the problem.
Let's go back to the phone line. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Victor,
Hey.
when you're going by the mountainside, you're supposed to get a map. You get a phone, you take a picture, come down the bottom, come straight up when you know the location. Because when I went to Martin Posted, I almost lost. I wait on which part I coming from, and when I reach another in the middle, I wait again. So then I find all the chairs that I go with back to the booth. When you got to do those things, they own them. I can walk with some feathers, and the traffic each time you're going up. And you stop doing that.
All right, man. Thanks.
right,
Thanks
good
for
tips, good
yeah, man.
tips.
Thanks for your tips, man.
Indeed.
But I don't think the SADAS would have worked at this particular time because there was a lot of
water,
rainfall. A lot of rainfall.
Let's back to
But
the-
good tip.
All right, let's go back to the phone line. Good morning. You're live.
Eh,
Hey.
Senior Garn Junior coming in now.
Yes,
Dylan,
man.
yeah.
Gentlemen, good morning.
Yes,
Good morning.
man.
Yeah, I'm here listening, and you all gave some great points. I'm glad that the incident turned out how it turned out. But in relation to persons going and hike by themselves, that by itself is very dangerous,
Yes,
It is.
especially when you're not from the country.
Yep.
I learned from my old police, local knowledge. You cannot beat local knowledge because when you go to these places, you're already challenged because you don't know the area.
Yep.
And then when you're in this, and you know, sometimes people take the police force, the defense force, the fire rescue for granted. But it's only when persons are in these positions, then they realize how important these agencies are. And at the same time, you all have to consider, and as you rightly say, you have to consider yourself, your safety first and foremost.
Yes.
Because a person might have said, well, why they didn't go at this time, but at the end of the day, you have to look at the condition.
You can't just risk your life and other person's life because of that situation. You have to weigh the balance and make sure at the end of the day, your safety comes first and foremost.
Indeed.
And about having a local guide, I used to do a bike tour, and that made a difference because we know the area and we know the traffic.
Right.
It make a difference because sometimes you find person just come into the country, they rent a vehicle, they don't know the traffic in terms of driving on the left, driving on the right.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is a problem. So this tour guide, it goes a long way. But the tips that you all gave are great tips, and I hope a lot of persons are taking it. Do not take it for granted.
Yes.
Because as you rightly say, these things, they are very, very dangerous. Fortunately for the gentleman, he had some kind of backup system.
Yes.
So God forbid he didn't have the backup system, you know what I mean? It was a real rainy weekend.
Yeah.
And it's nothing you all would have been able to do initially. But I'm glad that it worked out, but sometimes it don't work out that way. But great show as usual, gentlemen. Before I go, have a good day.
Yeah, man.
Any comments before we take any more calls?
At this point in time, I would like to thank the two civilians who played a major role in that rescue. We had Mr. Antonio Agard from Old Road. He, while we were heading down to Newton Grong area, I called him, and without a hesitation, he said, "Look, I just jump out of bed, give me a few. Stop by me in Old Road." So, stop by Old Road, and then he was able to go down with us. He has a wealth of knowledge pertaining to different trails, not just the trails from the trail at the equator. Old Road, Wingfield Mountain, different areas he have a wealth of knowledge about. And Mr. Tyrone Bell from St. Paul's, he has a wealth of knowledge about the trails and them as well. It's not the first time he has been on expeditions like these with us. He was able to assist us when there was the situation where the tourists went up in the mountain, a couple, but one didn't make it. He was there with us, and there were other times as well. So I just want to give a shout out to those two individuals in particular who assist us greatly on this hike. And this rescue.
Yes, ma'am. I understand what you want to say. Let's go to the phone line. Let's try this one. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, GQ.
Yes, morning, man.
We wanted to thank the young men then for such a good job. But my concern, GQ, frequently going in the mountain and going around Sinkits, things I used to do long time. When I look at these trails, it's a shame. These department heads must get down on the government since we out of sugar to clean these trails. And then we got the jumbies them in Sinkits, trying all kind of nonsense in tracks, in trails. Man, it's terrible, GQ. And this time I'm going to hire a chopper from Antigua and we drive around.
Okay, brother.
And see what these vagabonds doing to us.
Yeah, brother.
But anyway, young man, I want you all, and I hope the commissioner of police listening me, that to rally the government to get these trails clean, just like how the factory used to do, make these trails clean. Because I never know what's going to happen, Tourists coming in the place, some tourists, they don't take part. They want to do things different. They don't go on these trails and then get caught up. So the department, them trying to reach out, when you look road black with trees, track black up with, man, come on. It is terrible,
Yeah.
I just ask myself if it's this young man the country for.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Yeah, man.
Yes, bless up.
Yes, man.
Man, culture.
Yes,
What
sir.
we call culture.
Yes, sir. Got you, brother. Any response to what John was saying, or are we going to go straight to another call?
No, I certainly agree with what he's saying. I mean, I would have expressed that concern on talk show with solid waste as well. Because some of the trails that are used for tours, they are like seriously horrible. The garbage. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I could share with what he's saying because, like I said, I would have emphasized that on I'm not sure some time ago. But again, the park rangers, that's what these guys do. They are responsible for keeping the trails clear and clean. But they can't do it by themselves. So persons who take the trails, whatever you if you don't meet it there, don't leave it there. Alright? You don't meet any garbage, don't leave any garbage. Take your stuff back out.
Simple. All right, let's go back to the phone line. Good morning.
Good morning, family. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good.
And good morning to Miss Sunday, Timothy Martin.
Hey, good morning to you.
I just got to say, I'm so proud of you all. But I did a lot of camping because I'm an adventurist and I used to go a lot of camping with Pathfinders. I don't know mountain and sleeping in St. Anyhow, I think we used to do, when we got together, we always find out what you are allergic to. We have that written down. And we always have a nurse
And stuff.
with us, you know?
Yes.
And we always have a body system. And if
Right.
we're traveling, we stop, we count. They used to always tell us, if you leave with 10, bring back 15.
Come back.
Don't bring back 8.
I like that.
And one place I hike already, from Tamanac down there by the Amanchu them,
Yeah.
and I walk all mountain, never see land, till I reach Bakayan, by Halangot. So,
Wow.
hiking is good, eh?
Yes, it
I can't
is.
do it so much now, but I just like that thing. So I hear you all, so I say I have to call in and big up my cousin, GQ,
Yes, ma'am.
my son, Timothy,
Yes,
and my
ma'am.
adopted son there.
Thank you.
Real good, but you know, you got other little tips you could get. You can make sure everybody, you know what I like to when they're going in case anything.
Yes.
And you got a first aid kit and little different things can
Right.
happen.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah.
But that was very good. You all did a very good job. Everybody.
Thank you
all
very
them and
much.
all already know. Very, very good job.
Yes,
you all have
thank
a
you.
blessed day.
Yes, you
Alright,
too.
thanks
You
for your
too, man.
contribution, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. You too. You too. All right, we got 2 more calls coming. We'll take these last 2 calls. All right, we lost that one. Let's try this one. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
Yeah, you get in.
Timothy and Rampel.
You
Yes,
get in.
sir.
In giving your tip, there's something that I think key was left out. And that is the wearing of clothes, the type of clothes, the color. It should be, you understand where I'm coming from.
Yes,
Yes,
indeed.
So I leave that for you to expound on. Right? Should be reflective stuff and that kind of thing.
Right.
And also, when you're going in a group, whoever is in charge or among themselves, they should have a strategic plan in place. What if this happens? How do we go about it? Not wait until something happens and then you start panicking. You should have a few scenarios in your head. What is likely to happen to where you're going as an
Yes.
individual. Have
Right,
them in your
right.
head so when something happens, you can quickly get into action. That is my tidbit for now. I'll keep listening.
Yeah, Fox. Thank you.
That
All
was
right,
some very
ma'am.
good tidbits.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We got time for one more call. I did say 2, and then we're going to close off the program. He was saying that he will leave the clothes
Clothing.
for you all to elaborate on. We'll do so after this call. Good morning.
Good morning, GQ.
Hey.
Yeah, man.
Yes,
Good
I.
morning, Timothy and
Rommel.
Romel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rommel.
morning to you.
yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah, morning.
I want to commend you all because when just make a search in the rain, I think it is more dangerous than a fire, especially going in the hills.
Yeah.
Because anything could happen. Big stone could roll out, this could happen, that, and you know what that could take place. Now, I hope to partners, to farmers, to elderly farmers who are engaged with all the time. Because they said they don't like phone. Phone this and phone that. Tell them phone is very important.
You can
When
pay
you are going to
it
the mountain and I farm, walk with iPhone, I don't know what's happening. You could take in and feel back up there.
That
And you
is
could
so.
make a call.
That
Yep,
is
yeah.
true.
So
Yes.
walking the phone is very important. And my question to you all, is the soldiers the most reliable?
Yes.
Because I never know fire and rescue does the show like that too. I know if it's an accident, you all will come with your machine and do what you all got to do and cut out whatever. But I don't know like how somebody gets trapped in the mountain. I do not know fire and rescue. I thought more the soldier and the police will that is the duty.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to commend you all and I just hope you all get more facilities to when those kind of things happen, that you all could make track. Because we got all kind of radar and all kind of things. And I hope that everything go feel you all and go good. So this you especially with the fire,
Yes.
because it's heartening to see that every minute the fire truck here and there, here and there, here and there, something you all will get fall. All right then, you all have been a wonderful. May God bless all.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Thanks. Same to you.
thanks,
man.
man. Thanks, buddy. Yes, gentlemen, I'm going to let you choose how to wrap up, and you have
Yeah.
a couple of responses. You were going to respond to the closing aspect, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, Timothy will respond to the closing aspect. Just one thing, as he mentioned, the dangers of going up to those places, and he mentioned about the rock falling. It brought back a incident we had going up to Bloody Point. Bloody Point got. While we were going up and we were coming down, we heard a sound. So we were looking up in the trees because it sounded like wind. So we realized the trees were still, but we still hearing this loud sound. A few minutes later, a wall of water. The gut came down, a wall of water come on the corner, big stone and all kind of things. So we started skipping rocks.
What
And
is
literally skipping rocks
I remember that good.
until the water caught us. So we had to just anchor somewhere.
What
so that
you
the water,
saying?
serious.
I remember that very good.
Serious. So that is another thing to consider when you're going on hikes. Look at the weather condition, because when the gut start to run, is rocks and trees and all type of things coming down in the gut.
Wow.
Luckily for us, we were at a point where the water probably just reached around waist height. So we were good, but it could have gone horribly worse than that. So yeah, I'm glad he mentioned that. So we need to take those type of things into consideration as well.
All right. Timothy?
Yes. So in relation to the clothing aspect, the reflective clothing is important. Don't wear dark type clothing. Even if you have a dark jacket or something like that, wear a reflective vest. That would enable persons to be able to see you from a distance. Okay, that is important. A next thing to add to, based on the weather, you want to stay as dry as possible. So make sure you carry a raincoat. What I had to do on that hike, I got a hold of a large garbage bag, and I made that into my raincoat because being soaked and the wind, the temperature is a bit, it's colder.
Yeah.
It left you shivering down to your socks, wet and everything. So
I think there's a drop of oxygen the higher you go as well.
the higher you go, the less oxygen is in the air.
Right.
So yeah, make sure you stay as dry as possible when you go on these hikes. So walk with something that could repel the water.
Okay.
It would be curious of me to not to mention Mr. Herschel Brown. He was one who went on the hike with us. He's a Red Cross member. His name slipped me because I see him as one of us. He's always there, but he's on the more on the civilian side. So I just want to give a big shout out and thanks to Mr. Herschel Brown. He's one who I called that same very morning, and he responded to the call just like that.
Indeed.
Thanks, Herschel.
Gentlemen, thanks for sharing the experience. I'm hoping our listeners are a bit more aware of what they should do and don't do if you are going to get adventurous and go hiking. Thanks for being here as usual, and next
Pleasure,
week,
sir.
same time, same place.
Of course.
Same time, same place.
All right.
All right, stay tuned. We have some more information for you coming up. It's from National Bank this time, though. I know it's Sherna Pemberton, and she's going to be here. And knowing her, she's probably already outside. Don't touch that dial. We'll be back right after these messages.
Hello, St. Kitts and Nevis! The bundle that packs the most just packed even more. Get a Digicel Prime Plus bundle today and enjoy 1 extra gigabyte every day for YouTube and 1 gigabyte for TikTok on top of the already amazing dedicated data for your movies, music, messaging, cloud storage, and so much more. That's more apps, more gigs, more